Alright class, this is the last video that's required of you for this unit. It's just fun with matrices, kind of just to get you used to what matrices are. So a matrix is a way to organize numbers into rows and columns. So rows and columns. Matrices are equivalent, so they're the same, if they have the same dimensions. So same number of rows and columns, and if the corresponding positions are equal. For example, if I had a matrix that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 by 2, and another one that was 1, 2, 3, 4, those would be equivalent or equal. Adding and subtracting, you have to have the same dimensions to do that. So right away, number 2, you cannot do. Number 1, you just kind of subtract the pieces that are in the slots. So we're subtracting -2 minus -3. That's a double negative that'll turn into a plus. So -2 plus 3 is 1. -5 minus 4. So -5 minus 4 is a -9. 4 minus a -3. That's another double negative. So it's 4 plus 3, which is 7. And finally, we have 11 minus 6, which is 5. So that is the final answer. Multiplying by a scalar, so we're just multiplying a number into a matrix. All you do is multiply that number to all 4 pieces. So -24, -2, -12, +8. Okay, so those are pretty basic. Now, when you multiply matrices, it's a little different. It's not, you don't just multiply the numbers together in the first column, kind of like adding and subtracting. You have to follow a pattern. So in order to do it though, the number of columns in the first matrix must equal the number of rows in the second matrix. So for example, it always goes row by column times row by column, so these have to equal in order to get that, and then when you multiply, you will be left with a matrix that is in the dimensions of m by p. So for this one, these match. So our final matrix, if we multiply these two big matrices together, we'd get a 2 by 3, and this one you can't do because these do not match. Okay, now here's how you do it by hand. Again, this is a 3 by 2, and this is a 2 by 2. So our final answer is going to be a 3 by 2, because these cancel, so we're left with a 3 by 2. And here's what you do. You take the first row and multiply it by the first column. Actually, I'll use the same color so you know which ones I'm doing. And then, so 3 times 5 is 15, plus, or minus, depending on what happens. -1 times -1 is 1, so that's 15 plus 1. So the first slot is going to be 16 once you add those. Now you do the same thing with the top, and now this second one. So 3 times 0 is 0, plus -1 times 3 is -3. So we have the first row done. Now we go on to the second row and multiply it by the first column of the second matrix. 4 times 5 is 20. 7 times -1 is a -7. You do the same thing for the first or the second row in the second column. You get a 0 times 4 is 0, plus 21. And then finally we have the bottom row times the first column. We have a 10, 2 times 5, and a 6 times -1 is a -6. And I don't know, I'll use this color. The last one will be 2 times 0 is 0, plus 6 times 3 is 18. And that's your matrix, so then you just simplify it. So the new matrix is 16, -3, 13, 21, 4, 18. And that is a 3 by 2. Okay? So that's how you do it by hand. Now I'm going to show you how to do it using the calculator. Get your calculators out. You can pause it if I'm going too fast. So what you want to do is you want to go to the matrix menu. So it's under the math button, it's this inverse key. You hit second and then x to the -1, or x inverse. And you should get a thing that says names, math, edit, and it should look like matrices. We're going to go to edit because we want to put some put a matrix or two in. the first one I want to put in is a 2 by 2 based on my problem. And I hit enter and enter, and it should show you the 4 things. So you just type it in, -3, enter, and it goes over, so 2 enter, 1 enter, 4 enter. Okay, so that's entered in. I need to enter the second one. I'm going to call that matrix B. So if I hit second, that x to the -1 again, I can move over and enter in now B, and B is a 2 by 3. And you can type in all your numbers. 6, 1, -2, 3, -1, and 5. Alright. So, I have them. So now what you do is once you have them entered in, you go back to your home screen and you just want to multiply them. So you go to the same menu, except for instead of edit, you just go to names, because names means we're going to use it. I want to multiply A. And then I go back to names and I pick B. That's A times B right there. If it correct dimensions should work, you hit enter, and sure enough, there is our answer. -12, -5, 16, 8, -3, 18. Okay, so if you need to see that again, just rewind. I know I went kind of fast, but that is how you multiply matrices in the calculator. And that was our A and that was our B. And so we'll say that this is a -12, -5, 16, 18, -3, and 18. I think that was right. There was 2 18s. Yes. Okay. So, an identity and inverse matrix. So we have already talked about what an identity property is and an inverse property. So the identity matrix, though, for a 2 by 2, that'll give you the same thing out as a 1 0 0 1. And for a 3 by 3, it's kind of the same thing. It's a all the ones are on the diagonal. So, real quick, if you want to show how that works, we want to show that if you multiply this times this, you get the same thing out. You can use your calculator to do this, put this in for B and that for A, or you can really quickly just kind of do it by hand. So we know it's the first row times the first column, so we get 5. The first row times the second column is a 3. Second row times the first column is a 2. Second row times the second column, there's just a 4. And sure enough, that is the same thing. Okay? If you do it the other way, you will also get that it's A. So it doesn't matter which way you multiply them. Okay, for number 6, an inverse matrix takes us to the identity matrix. So it's the matrix that we will multiply our A by to get us to the identity. So it says calculate A inverse from example 6. Now with inverses, we're going to do those on the calculator. So I'm going to enter 5, 3, 2, and 4 into my calculator now. Okay, so second matrix, edit A, and I'm going to enter in what I was just talking about, 5, 3, 2, 4. So once you have that in, you can exit. Now here's what we do to find the inverse. You just go like we were doing before, second matrix, hit enter on 2 by 2, and then the key that you've been hitting with the second key, now do not hit the second key, just hit inverse, and you get the -1 there. So this basically says I want the inverse of that matrix. Now it looks a little sloppy, so you can still do math frac just like you did for any other answers, and sure enough, you get the answers in fractions. So 2/7, -3 14ths, -1/7, and 5/14. So let's write that down. A inverse is equal to, it was 2/7, -3/14, -1/7, and 5/14. So if we multiply this times A, you will get an identity. So let's do that real quick. So that's the identity. I'm going to say A, and then I'm going to say times A inverse. And we should get that identity matrix that we were showing you before. And sure enough, we do. So remember, an inverse gets you to the identity, and an identity keeps something the same. Okay. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is solve. because that's the only way to solve. So to solve this matrix equation, you have to inverse both sides. So because we know this times this is an identity, so we just are left with x, and then this is going to become A inverse B. So this is how you'll always solve them, and that's what you'll type into the calculator, because again these will then cancel, and then you have to also do an A inverse here. Okay, so on this one, x is equal to -3, 4, 5, and -7, inverse 3, 8, 2, -2. Now, there are ways to type that in without editing your matrix. I believe under alpha y equals, I haven't done this in a while, let me look. Yeah, there is something called matrix up here. So you can say you have a 2 by 2 and hit OK. So if you want to just enter it in on the screen, you can also do that. That's alpha y equal, and then hit zoom, which is the F3 button. And then pick your rows and columns. Let's try it this way. Sorry about that. So we have -3, 4, 5, and -7. But then I want the inverse of that, and then I want another matrix, so alpha y equals zoom, and I want another 2 by 2, and we're multiplying that by b, which is 3, 8, 2, and -2. So you can do it this way too if you want. Sometimes it's better. If you have a math print, you can do it this way. You hit enter, and we get that value. Did I do something wrong here? No, I just didn't write my answer down. Okay, so you get -29, -48, -21, and -34. So we get that x is equal to okay. And then on this one over here, you have to subtract first, and you can subtract the whole matrix. So you're left with 3, 7, 1, 4 times x equals 7 minus 8 is -1. -3 minus 5 is a -8. -2 minus 1 is a -3. And then finally, -9 minus 15 is a -24. So to solve for x, we get A inverse times b. b is the thing it was equal to. Okay. And again, for quick purposes, I'm going to just hit second enter to bring this one back up, and then just change the numbers real quick. So the first number is just 3. The next number is 7. And 3, 7, 1. And 4. And then over here, what we just calculated when we subtracted, we get -1, -8, -3, and -24. Alright, and then you hit enter, and you get some decimals. Again, you can math bracket, and our final answer is that matrix, so we can write that out. So this was the answer to 8, and this is the answer to 9. 17/5, positive 136/5, -8/5, and finally -64/5. So that's just how you can use your calculator. We're not going to actually do anything crazy with these. It was just to show you guys how to use your calculator with matrices and how to multiply them. We're actually going to be using inverse matrices to solve systems of equations, which will make things a lot easier than doing them by hand. All right.